It's out of our control. It's not like he wants to kill. He just doesn't want to die. You know what I'm saying? It's that situation when we are living in a war zone. I feel like I can represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. But now, I cannot die. I can't leave until this straight. You know, I'm not suicidal. I can't go until y'all really know what time it is. And then after that, boom, it's all over. And we can see, you know, how this unfolds. But that's how it is. And the reason being is because if I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here. Because God has cursed me to see what life should be like.
I said we ain't no loafers, we ain't no poachers, we ain't no haters of self, we ain't no vultures. This ain't our culture. I said this ain't our culture. I said we ain't no loafers, we ain't no poachers, we ain't no haters of self, we ain't no vultures. This ain't our culture.
I said this ain't our culture. Man, let me tell y'all. I probably don't have to tell y'all, all right? Probably don't have to say too much at this point. You know, you tapped into, you know, top to top with King Phillip. So let's go ahead and run this disclaimer real fast for y'all, all right? So you tapped into the top to top with King Phillip under the Make a Culture Move podcast, where we talk about the issues within the Black and Brown community that don't go spoken upon. You know, these issues have been they lay dormant for so long that it festered and become very destructive and deadly, to the point we don't even acknowledge these issues as issues. All right. So I'm saying all that to say, you know, I didn't have to go out and go do a whole lot of research to make me an expert on the topics that we talk about. You know, my experience alone, our experience alone makes us the experts. So the experts, that's what they do. They go and get the data from us to make them the experts in this quote unquote topic in they quote unquote field. You know, so I'm saying all that to say as well, because y'all are not hearing me when I say this. If we say something that makes you feel some kind of way, all right, please take that time to reevaluate why what was said made you feel some kind of way. Because, you know, it's not the move. You coming to me, talking to me, trying to check me, trying to flex on me about something that's nothing, you know, and I ain't got time for it, really. You know, I can't do the back and forth on Facebook. I can't do that shit all day. You know, I got emails to respond to. You know what I mean? I'm saying all that to also say, too, I know firsthand violence is not the answer. All right. You know, it come down to the point where what we're saying, folks are truly taking personal. You know what I mean? Instead of taking that time to reflect why what was said made them feel that way, they're taking it personal and they want to hurt a G. All right. So, you know, I had thought about, you know, opening up a gym, you know what I mean? Just so we can go, if you truly feel that way, we can go to the gym, put some gloves up, and we can chunk them. You know, I'm not a boxer. I don't fight. I don't know nothing about no violence, none of that. But I do know how to scrap. You know what I mean? So, and then I'm like, you know, the thought went through my head of me knocking one of you niggas out, of me knocking one of y'all out, and y'all taking it personal, you know, to the point where it's going to go to that next step. And I'm like, man, you know what? We ain't even going to take it there. So, if you have not done so, you know, I'm saying all that to say, just please do some reflecting, some self-evaluation. That's it. All right. If you have not done so, check out the Make a Chess Move page. All right. We got a dope website. I'm going to just put that out there. DOPE. All right. Fresh to death. Go on the website, click the donation tab. I'm not telling you to make a donation. I'm not telling you to click the donation and then make a donation. I'm telling you to click the donation tab and then scroll down to the bottom. We have a toolkit that you can copy the picture, you can copy the text in that toolkit and then get it out there to your people. You can text it to your people. You can send it in a Facebook message. You can do it however you want to. We backdoor them things, all right? So use that toolkit. Go ahead and like the Facebook page, /Malcolm303, Instagram page, /Malcolm303. Check out that Twitter thing, /Malcolm303. And then go ahead and check out that Pinterest thing, /Macam 303. I'm getting good at this. I'm at 5 minutes exactly when it comes to that rundown. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring our guests in. Because I'm not the only one who has been affected by what is going on in our community. All right. So our guests, number one, if y'all don't know, then I ain't gonna get on you. I ain't gonna throw no personal attacks out there. You know what I mean? But let's go ahead and guys, can y'all please introduce yourselves, please?
Mom, go ahead and go first, please. Well, I think okay, she backed that. She'll tap back in, but I'm E Huff. You know what I'm saying? I work for the greatest place in the world at Macam, and I'm super excited to be in this conversation. That's all I'm gonna say. You precious, son. You on mute?
Look at me, man. You know what I mean? Oh, there she go. She right back. All right. Gonna give her a minute. But and the reason why, okay, boom, there we go. There we go. You on mute, ma. See if she gonna get it. All right.
There we go.
Okay. She gonna work it out. Until she work it out, we're gonna preface what we on this morning. All right. So this morning, right now, we're I'm sure most of y'all have been up and kept up on what's going on just for the sake of, oh shit, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what Phillip's going to say next. I wonder who's going to say what. I wonder who's going to take this from Facebook to the streets to action. You know what I mean? From idea, from words to actual canvas. You know what I mean? Who's going to take it there? That's why most people are tapped in. My thing is, I'm letting y'all know firsthand, off the rip, that I don't want to take it there. You know what I mean? I'm not interested in taking it there. All right. I'm interested in getting our community in a position, in a place to where we can all grow and elevate together. Right now I put a lot of our, and I put a lot of our blame on the gang culture. All right. To the point where I feel like snitching has been an issue, with them letting the snitches and the confidential informants just run and do whatever the fuck they want to do. You know what I mean? I feel like the OGs just backing out, not wanting to deal with the younger homies is an issue. All right. I feel like gang banging to the acts of violence that's taking these fathers away from their families is an issue. I feel the act that's getting these gang members taken away by getting them killed is another issue. But we talking about these issues, and it's all centering around gang banging in that culture, and we still don't see it as an issue, as a problem, and that's a problem for me. And it just came this morning that we don't, how do we address this gang issue? Especially right now where we have folks who speak out against it, and then you have the community come in and was like, well, you shouldn't have said that, Phillip. You should have said it with more compassion. You should have been more respectful when you said what you said. You should have, that's what people are asking me. They're asking me, okay, so what's next? They're asking me all these questions. My thing is, again, I'm challenging all the gang members, Blood, Crips, the oldies, the chickies, you know what I mean? I want to challenge all gang members to make gang banging what it used to be. That's my goal. That's the end goal. I ain't trying to tell y'all to stop gang banging. I don't want y'all to stop being something that's embedded in you. I don't want you to stop doing that, but I want you to try to see how you can get it back to what it used to be. And I don't know if that's asking too much. What you think, huh?
When I think about this question, like when you say something like that, it's like, was it ever what we thought it was? You know what I mean? Because this is the thing is my generation is got a whole different experience and a whole different outlook on gangbanging. For instance, my neighborhood in general, I grew up in the east side that was partially the hood and then partially gentrified. So the unity that existed amongst the gang members my age is not the same. So, you grow up in the hood and, as my homies start taking off in the streets and really getting into it, we'd always hear, oh, you little niggas is snitches. You little niggas ain't this, you ain't that. But then you get older, then you find out that 10, 15 years ago, big so-and-so told on so-and-so. Or then you find out 10 years ago, big so-and-so set up whoop-de-whoop to get killed. So it's like, when you really look at it, it's like it's really been a facade. I think what happened is the penitentiary stripped a lot of the authentic ones. We got a lot of dudes sitting behind doing life 25, 30, 40 years. The
I mean, what are
penitentiary
they
stripped.
doing life for? That's what I'm saying. What are they doing life for? If
Well, but this the thing, is like I agree with everything you say. The only little bit of leeway I give people when they talk about giving a little bit more compassion is because when I sit and look about specifically that era, I'm talking about like, those who jumped in about late 80s, 90s, you know what I'm saying? I'm looking at the attack on the black community and just how severe it was. I'm looking at the crack epidemic. I'm looking at just the lack of resources that kind of exist more so in black communities in my generation. I'm looking at just the whole weight of oppression that existed a little bit heavier upon people your age, of your generation, that kind of boxed them into the position where they had no choice but to gangbang. Like growing up, being born in the late 90s and growing up in the East Side, it was definitely a hell of a hard choice not to gangbang, but it's not the same comparison that you endured making it through the East Side not trying to gangbang, simply because your neighborhood wasn't gentrified like mine
I
was.
mean, and the thing is nowadays, so the difference, I don't know, but when I was younger, that allure still had that positive aura. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like the OGs who was gang banging back in the days, they made sure that I was going to school. Like keep it
Yeah.
moving, nigga. Don't
But
don't
he
stop.
but he lived in your community.
Yeah, he
See,
did.
that's the
Yeah,
difference. He lived in your community. My OG did not live in my community 85% of the time. In the hood, most of the times you would be like, for instance, I got a homeboy right now who's 24 in jail. His little homie's like 16. You know what I'm saying? That gap, that age range, you know what I'm saying? That's just kids damn near raising kids, you know what I'm saying? And then you look at some of the dudes my age, they OG lived in Montbello because they was with their baby mom on Section 8, or they OG lived in Green Valley, you know what I'm saying? So the disconnect, while they was in the east side kicking up dust, there wasn't nobody grabbing them up like, hey, man, you can't be, you know what I'm saying? You need to think smarter. Take your ass to school first before you just run out here with a gun and just get to shooting and being stupid. You know what I mean? So the disconnect even exists in the same space, in the same connections, it's not even there.
so where did we lose that though? You know what I mean? How did we lose that component of community connections? You know what I mean? Where they're looking out for us versus that disconnect where your big homie ain't from the same hood that you in and stuff like that. You know what
Well,
I
I
mean?
mean, and that's what makes to me, and the way I look at it, gang banging extremely complicated, and why gang culture and the model that exists now, it just simply does not work for the era that we live in today. In Denver, speaking for particularly where we exist, our neighborhood's been gentrified. That is separate away from gang culture. That's separate away from gang. I mean, and not necessarily, because we know that that rots a community, tears down the property value, and then causes the process of gentrification. But when you look at it in history, we've got to start looking at gang banging in the structure differently than we ever have before, simply because of the effects like gentrification. The new model of gentrification, how it's come through and stripped our neighborhood, we need to really look at how that affected gang culture and affected the hierarchy in the system. So you look at that, then you factor in technology. Even when it comes to holding down your neighborhood and protecting your neighborhood from a different threat, that is not under the same context neither. There is a camera on every single corner. They got towers that can buzz your phone. So the whole process and the whole entire structure of gangbanging as we know it does not fit the mold today currently with the communities that exist and with technology that exists. That's why we get in these difficult ass discussions because we're still contextualizing gangbanging in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is 2021. Gangbanging has a completely different appearance. It has a completely different look, especially when you live in a community such as ours that's been heavily gentrified. We're not in Chicago where we're stacked on top of each other and there's hundreds and thousands of us in a little tiny space. It's completely different. So we've got to look at how has gentrification and technology changed the way gangbanging has affected our community, because those two impacts are the reason why we having these conversations today.
I mean, even to that point too, even back in the day, I'm still looking at the comparison too.
Yeah.
All right, back in the day, we still had gang members that protected, who was protectors in the community as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and nowadays, it's crazy because you have community activists, and then you have folks who do community work. You know what I mean? I don't never, I make it clear that I'm not a community activist. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I work in the community. I work with the community. You know what I mean? But the thing is, for those, I feel like athletes, especially young, gifted, talented athletes, I feel like they were, back in the day, they were protected. You know what I mean? And I'm getting to nowadays, even when you have folks standing up against what is wrong, when you have folks that's saying what is wrong with gangbanging.
Okay, well, let me throw this perspective to you real quick, Unc, and then James, and I want you to jump in. Let's look at gangbanging immediately, what it is a result after. So we look at civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King passes off, that whole era passes off. Immediately, we see the rise of the real push of the Black Panther Party. Black Panther Party dies off, Fred Hampton, all of them. Now we start to see the Crips and Bloods. So when you even look at the influence of the movements that existed, we're looking at how we have moved and progressed further and further and further and further away of the original thought of unity and community. So you look at the generations now. My OG, if I was gangbanging, would have been born, if we're looking at a good age range, would have been born maybe in like 85, 90, maybe. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be a hell of a lot more removed, possibly simply because of the effects of the neighborhood, the way that the epidemic has hit our community, the way that violence entered our community. His outlook on society and life is going to be a hell of a lot different than those of the Black Panther Party or those of the civil rights movement who were pushing that kind of unity. They're marked by a different kind of violence against the people. So his influence on me is not going to be the same. And then that effect is multiplied over and over and over again. So you get a new generation that doesn't have the same set of values, the same set of respect, and the same set of outlook on community unity the same way the generations before us did. So it's like it's a completely different a completely different generation influencing another generation than it was before. Because you hear that a lot of OGs had a lot more.
Like that.
Go ahead.
That's why we have something like that. Because I mean, when you start talking about the Black Panthers specifically and organizations who were just immensely positive and about building the community, one thing that I was talking about even on, I think it was Tuesday, these organizations were, actually targeted by serious organizations like the FBI and the CIA. And, every resource was thrown at these organizations to make sure that they weren't positive and to make sure that they were seen in a negative light. So, I mean, you have to understand, after you see the Black Panthers and groups like this who did everything they could to be positive, and you see them destroyed, it almost leads you to down the path of what am I going to get, or what's the point of even staying on a positive platform if at the end, all we're going to get is destruction. So, it almost becomes a situation where, it's disheartening, once you're trying to do everything that you possibly can to build your community, or you're watching your parents do this and still their efforts are shit on, shame, and, come under attack from the government.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I was going to say. And then it pushes them to that anger. And then you throw a crack epidemic in the middle of all that. And that shit ruined everything. So then now we have a generation of angry, pissed off, drug addicted individuals leading the next generation. And now we are where we are today.
And to that point too, you know, even looking at the education that was passed down with those movements, it got watered down. You know, I was in a class where one of the little homies who was claiming the set didn't even know what Crip meant. He did not even know what Crip meant. But he's out here hard, you know, one of the hardest little homies out here banging, dumb as the fuck. Who's at fault there?
I mean, we are as a community. The OG is as a community, but when you look at that, though, you know, I was once watching an interview with Monster Cody, and he's a notable OG from LA from A-Tray Gangsters, and he talked about how when the crack epidemic hit the hood, it stratified the hood. And that was the first time that it ever existed. That originally, when you come from these community groups, Black people had always been poor together. So the idea of unity, the idea of passing along education, the idea of passing along good conduct was so much more valued because we were so closely knit, locked in, because we was broke as fuck together. Then they interjected crack into the community, and all of a sudden niggas is pulling up on Bentleys, you know, gold ropes looking crazy. So then you had a distrust for your neighbor that never existed before. So once that distrust for your neighbor and that jealousy for your neighbor came up, like, damn, he's sitting on money, I'm not sitting on money, and now he ain't sharing it because now that we got all these drugs, now we got all this money, now we got all this money, now we got all these guns. So the distrust and the money and all the hierarchy caused us to lose that connection where education, values, and all these things were passed down. So I just can't help but to bring it back to really how powerful the crack epidemic was to gang culture and how it stratified our neighborhoods in ways that never existed before.
And then, bro, when you ask the question of, you know, who's at fault? I mean, once again, I'll always go to, you know, I always believe that you can't absolve any man for his responsibility and making sure that he takes care of his community, his children, his own life. But at the same time, the government is to blame for a lot of this.
Yes.
You know,
You went mute
destruction
up.
that has been forced on us in slavery, then it's the police force, then it's crack, then we get, you know, the 100-to-1, you know, ratios with crack versus cocaine. You know what I mean? Our communities were set up in a way to where, you know, we would destroy each other. And even talking about what Huff said, that distrust between, you know, neighbors, you have to understand is, once again, that was all plotted out because, you know, when you implement, you know, people with resources in a community where the majority of the people have none, that is just going to create that crab in a barrel, is going to exasperate that crab in a barrel mentality, because everybody's going to be like, well, I want what he has. I want my family to live that way too. And best believe the people in power who put these drugs, who put these guns in our community, they knew that some of this stuff was going to happen, man. So, you know, that's one of my biggest things is like, hey, if I was to blame anybody, hey, seriously, it's the government.
And to speak to James' point real quick again, this is what makes it so hard, because us in this space, we're all about pushing accountability on our people, pushing accountability on our community. But gangbanging is one of those ones, when you look at it, how we are trying to right now in the grand scape, or in the grand, you know, the grand landscape of things, it's like, it's hard as hell to really blame us. It's hard as hell to look at us, at least with a lot percent of the blame, because like you said, we've got COINTELPRO, the police, drugs, there's so many things. And now technology is massive, because now you've got a generation that's dumb as hell and has no sensitivity to their community. So they're down to shoot another kid in broad daylight in front of a camera. That is, now they've achieved the true brainwashing and internal switch of an identity like they wanted to. And that's why this generation, you'll hear from the older generation, like, y'all are scary. You little niggas is crazy, because we are the pinnacle of what the government has been pushing on our people.
And, you know, to top that off too, you know, I'm just trying to see how long, you know, are we going to keep pushing the blame off on somebody else, on a system, on, you know, because my thing is, we've been doing that for a very long time, to the point where what's happening in our culture, in our community, with the little homie who don't know what Crip is, who his big homie should have taught him what it was, who his big homie should have taught him what it was, to the original roots of what Crippin' is. You know what I mean? So how long are we going to continue to just, not look at ourselves as, the blame? I understand the systems that's in place. I understand that completely. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we been knew this. We know it even more nowadays. So
The
who's
problem is, P, the problem is, and why it's hard to go ahead and just accept all this responsibility. And and this is what I'll just pose to you. At the end of the day, we're dependent on this system. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing that if we had, once again, resources to where we could truly separate ourselves and really start, raising this consciousness within our people. But this system has literally been created so that this cannot happen, or so that, as much as we push for change, that there's always going to be the push towards negative in the other way a little bit harder. So once again, I don't think that when you think about blame and how to change some of this stuff, one of the biggest things is just starting specifically, like we talked about, starting with these kids. Because this gangster mentality and the mentality that Young Huff is talking about that's been kind of forced on our people, it's a sickness, it's an illness that is, I don't know, and I have no answers on how how long it's going to take to root that out of our people, because it's been pressured and put into us for so long. But at the end of the day, as long as we're dependent on this system, it's going to have some effect on our people.
I think what makes us, I try to look at, because for one, in Denver, I want to also contextualize us here in Denver, because we are a little bit different. You know what I mean? Because number one, we copycatting from another place. That's just the name of it. Anybody who gets offended by that shit, you don't know your history. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying, and I got homies on my wall for this shit, so I understand how powerful it is. But at the end of the day, we're copycatting. But like, I like to look at Crippin' and Bloodin' and African American gangs and look at the real contrast between us and like Latino gangs and Italian, the mafia and the mob. You know what I'm saying? I think the one difference is what we have lacked as an African American community, and one thing is our lack of education, is a lot of the times with our drug money, street money in general, whatever, we don't actually put it into resources. If you look at the Latino gangs, you look at the mafia, they put their money into resources. And those resources eventually reshape their community, make their community safer, and eventually give the opportunity to actually change the narrative. Right now, we understand like street culture is not going to gain us those resources because the government has pinned against us too much, to where trying to get it through drug money, all that stuff, you go get indicted and eventually go down. If we as people who are in this space separate away from gangbanging and want to affect that realm, we have to be those people that get resources allocated to those spaces, so those kids then have reason not to want to choose that lifestyle, and then build that unity around it, because they're jumping in gangbanging for two reasons. You go ask any gang member my age why they start gangbanging. Because the big homie told me I was going to be able to get some money. He was going to teach me how to get some money. And then I was going to be able to kick it with the homies and feel some unity. So how can we answer that on the outside looking in? Is we've got to be able to give them the resources, able to get the money that cancels out one attraction to the lifestyle. And then we have to build a comprehensive unity that is attractive to our culture. We don't need to put black kids all in these suits and shit and make them march down to the Capitol. I know some little niggas that don't want to wear suits, period. They want to wear their sweats. They want to wear their hoodies. They want to look comfortable, and they want to put the east side on their chest. That's fine. That's separate away from violence. That's separate away from gangbanging. We can redefine that, but we've got to give them the resources and the unity that makes them feel like they're at home, makes them feel like they're a part of their culture. And then we can start to reshape what it means to be us, whether that's Crippin', whether that's under another name. But it's those two things, man. It's resources and it's resources and building that community that gives us a chance.
And then the only thing I was going to chime in is just I would like to throw a third reason. And you know what I mean? And just even really thinking about gang banging, and even, talking to, gang members, and, even doing my little bit of research, man, a lot of this stems from just a lack of fatherhood, and, brothers not having men in the house that can teach them what a man was. Most of a lot of gang members came from single family, you know what I'm saying, households where the mom was the only authority in the household. And then a lot of the times you got to understand that a lot of these mothers had to work at night. You know, a lot of these kids' moms were at work from 10 to 7 a.m. in the morning just to make sure that they could be there sometime during the day. And because of that, these kids were able to get into so much stuff, you know what I'm saying, that most kids shouldn't even have the opportunity to get into. But it's just that lack of fatherhood, man. You know, these kids are searching for identity. That's one of the biggest things that you'll learn. And you know, when you're searching for your identity, that's why we jump to so many different things. You got brothers who jump to pimping, brothers who jump to gang banging, brothers who jump to selling drugs, because through all of this, we're searching for our identity as males. I know my cousin who, you know what I'm saying, was a big blood. I mean, super blood. And, you know, it started in middle school. His father was out of the house, ended up committing suicide when, you know, he was younger. And, you know, man, I just think a lot of that really does stem from not having a man in the house and looking for that identity.
Go ahead. What was you gonna jump on that, Huff?
No, I disagree. I'm 100% with him. I agree.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know, I was gonna add too, um, with, I mean, even looking at that too, because the fault, it still lies on that gang banging culture. You know, just looking at the fathers not being in the homes. You know what I mean? Again, I'm still looking at the youngin, you know, who didn't know what Crip was, you know, and that's the umbrella where everything else falls underneath. And if y'all don't know, it's March Madness right now. This is where this conversation is coming from. If y'all don't know, on the east side and in Colorado, you know, they got the 30 gangs, you know what I mean? You know, from 30s to Trey Deuce, Trey 4, Trey 5, all the way, all right? And the thing is, on each day, they send they shout outs day, happy Trey Deuce Day, happy Trey Day, happy Trey 4 Day. For what? What are we happy about, Trey? I mean, are they happy because they put in the work? Are they happy because their homies got killed? Are they happy because they ain't taking care of their babies or taking care of the responsibilities? Are they happy? Why are they happy? Because they get to send all their dead homies, send their pictures on there and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, are they happy because they ain't sending their homies who's locked up the $33 that they supposed to send every month? Why are we happy and celebrating these days? That's what I want to understand too. Or that's what I
Because these guys have, bro, I'll tell you right now. And that's because you have to understand that these men have already dedicated their lives to a war, which gives them their identity. You know, once you've been gangbanging for 10, 15 years, to cut yourself and your identity is, that's who you are. You're a gang member. So to just cut that outside of you or take that from you, now who are you? Who are you in the community? After you've gangbanged for even for 5 years, 2 years, you've been gangbanging for 2, 3 straight years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. That is literally what you are in the community. That is literally where you get your acceptance, or where, once again, your identity. So, you know, that's why you have these things. And that's why these brothers are promoting them, because that is what they get, once again, their identity from. I don't even think it's necessarily them being happy as much as, once again, I think that once you dedicate your life to a war, and this is the fucked up thing, you know what I mean, 100%, most of these guys were kids when they dedicated themselves to this war. And we're talking about the unestablished, or, you know, a brain that has it, the brain of a youth that once again has not been molded and has not grown all the way or developed correctly. So at this time, before you even develop to know what decision to make, you dedicate yourself to a war that you can't get out of. So by the time, if you do this at 15, by the time you 20, 25, 30 years old, that's just what it's just what it is. It's not like you can just, I think a lot of them know how ignorant what they do is. But because they've been doing it so long, they would almost look foolish for renouncing gang banging. After, how would you look to your kids, to your girl, to your community, after you push this line for so long, to just the next one day just wake up like, hey, you know what? I renounce all of that This is ridiculous. I'm killing my community, bro. It would have to. It's gonna throw you in a mental place that it's not gonna make you, what I'm saying, or allow you to make the right decisions. But it's identity, man.
And I want to really double on that too. And not you, Unc. I'm not saying that you don't do this, but the question isn't asked to a man who returns home from Iraq or a veteran from Vietnam. That question's not answered when he celebrates, Independence Day. You know what I mean? We don't ask war veterans of this country that question on why they're so proud to be a war veteran, but we ask our neighborhood Crips that and our neighborhood Bloods that, as if they were not intertwined into a same violent kind of war. Just as if our army doesn't go and plunder another place for resources in the name of a flag, the same way that our Crips plundered another community in name of resources, in name of the flag. And to speak to James, we want to talk about suicide. A lot of these fellas would have been in suicidal situations at a young age if they didn't join a gang. I'll never forget the deepest shit my uncle ever said to me about gangbanging when I was really on a push one day, like, man, that gangbanging shit ain't cool. He was like, a lot of niggas know who they is because of the Crips. It's right, it may be right, it might be wrong, it may be indifferent, but a lot of niggas didn't even know who they was. A lot of niggas lost out here, full-blown drug addicts, are dead because they would have killed themselves in that era if there was not for the Crips. He was like, you got to understand, there was really not much. And he was like, that's just how some people feel. But this is one thing I also want to throw in. A lot of these dudes, especially in your era, started smoking Sherm early, started doing some real serious hard-ass drugs early. And research has shown that your brain development halts when you start using hard drugs in your adolescent phases. So some of them cats that are 38, 39, still chucking up them threes are really still about 21, 22 or 24, 25 in the brain. So that's another thing we have to consider is that drug abuse for that generation, they are literally not the age that they are. So to look at them to have the maturity of a man who has not done the same amount of drugs and has not been involved with that level of violence and intertwined for it, you have to do that. And then lastly, the hood represents all the dead homies to them. When you truck up that tray on Trey Day, that's for all the homies that has died for this shit. And that's the only way you can contextualize your love for them, that they know how to. So when you bang in the hood on that day, that's a lot of dudes saying, you know what, rest in peace to my homies that died for this shit just like I did. So like James said, that identity and that war aspect has a way more deeper impact on their identity than us who did not gangbang can even fathom. We have not gone to war for this shit. So that's where we can't pretend to know and understand the sense of belonging to it that they feel.
Yes, indeed. I can jig that 110%. And just to make it clear to everybody that's watching, we speaking from an outside perspective looking in. I ain't never gangbang. Huff ain't never gangbang. James never gangbang. You know what I mean? Made an attempt. Again, I made plenty of attempts to get them out here. These gangbangers, the lokes, they gonna tap in. You know what I mean? That's another fault in terms of their word and shit like that, in terms of working with them. And it's not the first time. You know what I mean? And I know I'm not the only one who experienced this. But also speaking on to the, I'm not, I don't want them to renounce gangbanging. You know what I mean? The thing is with the gangbanging, they turned it to that negative shit where we're fighting. Niggas don't even know why we're fighting and shooting and worried about who's going to shoot at us. They don't even know why anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm not asking them I'm asking them to change that shit. You can be a gangster all you want to. Be a gangster, changing and building a community. Before you was a gangster, you came out the pussy, a black man, a black woman. We teach and we educate you on who you are in terms of the African diaspora, not the gang banging effect. So when they say the little homies would have been lost, you know what I mean? They just made them more lost, in my opinion, by preaching that, you know what I mean? So when I say, some of the ones who have gang bang shouldn't be in here doing the community work, you know what I mean? And I stand behind that because some of them that gang bang don't want to lose or drop their gang banging ties. And then they want to come back in here and tell a youth who's sharper than them what moves they should make because they fucked up. You know what I mean? Because of they fuck ups and shit like that. So, it's we see the gang banging shit here in our community. That's why I don't say nothing about the soldiers in Iraq. I see those in effect of what's happening in our own state. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm speaking up on the East Side gang, period.
Yep.
People ask me how come I ain't saying shit about the West Side 8 Trays and Park Hill Bloods and all this other shit. I'm not
That's not our space. Yeah.
You know what blood mean. I just found out Bloods had a day on Tuesday. You know what I mean? They got 10-4. Intimate. I just found that out. You know, so I don't speak on that shit because that would be disrespectful. That would be disrespectful. I feel like me being in my own house, I can talk about what's going on in our own house and still be safe. I shouldn't have nobody in my own house, in my own community, talking about hurting me or harming me because I'm talking about what's happening in our own house and in our own community.
Well, can I offer this to you? You know, I've often thought that when it comes to this conversation, this is not a general approach for all the generations. For your generation and above, I'm gonna be honest. Coming from a young nigga, I don't really think the disconnect is too far from most of us, the general masses. And then the damage that's been done to your generation is so severe that if the community, like if the government was ever real ass serious, I feel like getting that generation together and healing this gangbanging population, they need to infuse therapists, specialists on cognitive behavior into the community to rehabilitate the generation that you belong to. That generation needs to be completely rehabilitated, needs to be healed, needs to have conversations that maybe that some people can't even fathom having. That needs to be for that generation. And then for my generation and younger, we just got to start changing the narrative, putting in the work to reach to these kids with the right positive message. But there is not a general approach to either. And I think expecting people your age and of that generation to come into the community and change this narrative, we're asking pigs to fly. You can't do the kind of shit like, we both work in this, literally, you hire me. The shit we do is stressful. The work we want to do is stressful. The kind of health that we have to be in and take care of and separate ourselves from, we got to make sure we do that. Them gang members don't have the capacity to do that. For one, they ain't as healthy as we are. You know what I'm saying? Two, they got so many criminal charges and shit that, you know what I'm saying, they don't even have access to certain things that we have to, especially myself, not gangbanging, going off to college, putting myself in position. So looking at that generation, they need help. They need to be rehabilitated. And I think that we're asking something of a generation that literally cannot give it to us. They can't. I don't, at least for a majority of the masses, maybe one here, one there, but until there's a lot of resources and focus put on healing that generation, we're asking them of something that's not possible.
I mean, what again? That's a whole nother topic too when we're talking about healing, because healing, you know, in my opinion, I don't think the traditional Western way of healing and therapy was meant for our culture. Was not meant for us. So I believe that we have to find a way for them to want to be able to do it, and it's something that they own. That's something that we own. You know what I mean? But that's my opinion on that. But how will we get them to, number one, acknowledge healing is needed, and then two, get it? Because I think the acknowledgement part, that's the heaviest part. That's the part that we can't get through. You know what I mean? And the healing process could even be, you know, I y'all know me. I try to hire as many active gang members as I can. I try to work with as many as I can. My problem that I'm always coming to experience is they don't have IDs. They don't have social security cards. So that's a part of that healing, a transforming, even walking away from that lifestyle. Nigga, get a social security card so I can put you on payroll. I can't put you on payroll if you're on some, just do it like this and we can do it like this. And nah, nigga, I do business the right way. You know what I mean? So even looking at that point too, like, I mean, it's coming down to the point, like I was saying, a lot of the behavior that we've accepted from them, it's the blame is on us, really. And if we don't do something different, and I feel like it got to be radical.
And man, man, just jump in here, man, because I think that there does need to be an extreme change. You know what I mean? But one thing that I can continue, and I have to drill this in, even on you, You know what I'm saying? Is that, man, you know, I don't know if either one of you guys have seen that James Brown like movie. Well, in the beginning of the James Brown movie, you know, the family's hungry, you know, they need food, and the father goes and steals a little bit of food. I think it was, you know, a couple of pieces of fruit, you know, some bread, a little bit of bread, a little bit of meat, nothing crazy at all. And he gets found for this. And then they come to lynch him, and he has to leave the family. You know what I mean? He tells his wife, like, I gotta go. You know, they gonna come in here and get at all of us. I gotta go.
And that's excusable. That's
My
understandable.
point is
I feel like
saying
that
all
all
this
day.
is that I think that we're trying to say that, you know, gangbanging has exasperated less males in the family, when, you know, I don't believe that at all. Once again, I believe it's the government's fault, and actually it's less males in the family that have exasperated gangbanging. You know what I mean? So that's one of my biggest things, bro. When we talk about, even you talk about healing, we have to, bro, in order to make this change, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of understanding and a lot of hand holding from us as a people to our own people. I hate to say it like that. You know what I mean? This is going to be something that does not happen in our time. You know, you hope that you can start making a dent so that our children and their children can see it come a different way. But just to young Huff's point, I agree with it. You know, once we have so many people in the community that are so far gone, that, you know, we're asking them to do something that they're truly not capable of, because they don't even have, once again, the tool set in order to really start building and helping build the community. You know what I mean? So, like, for one, I just think that in order to make that change, you have to accept the work that needs to be done. And it's going to be a lot of work that people don't want to do. And it's going to be a lot of elementary work, because you have to understand that the fundamentals from the beginning is what these people have missed. So we have to, like, go back to what, look, Young Huff is saying. You got some of these OGs, 38, 40, really with the 21-year-old mentality. You know what I'm saying? And my point of it is, in saying that, is that we going to have to go all the way back to the beginning. And, bro, that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort.
And to speak what James said, you know, I think what we're experiencing right now as an African American community is we're just really tired. I think in the grand scheme of our existence in our battle, especially in these past, what, 300-400 years, we're at a point where we're ready to put the torch down and, like, fuck, man, when is something gonna change right now? And I think of all the movements before us, they always had forward projecting thinking. And what this generation is thinking is we're too much of right now. And why that's so damaging is because we're so much about right now, because the culture of conveniency, the culture of right now, everything in our face is given to us right now. So that kind of mentality is now transferring to the movement, and in the movement, we want right now. What we have to remember is all the movements before us understood that this shit's not gonna happen in our lifetime. Like James just said, all of us on this screen, if God sees fit, we will all be dead and rotted away before Crippin' and Blood is even thought about being gone. And the reason being is because we have too much of a community that's marked by so much violence and so much drugs. So we just have to continue to grab those who are willing to be uplifted, and painfully, and this is what's the most painful shit about being a Black person on the planet, is understanding that some of us are not gonna make it. That's just the name of the game. That is the harshest reality of being a nigga, is understanding that, you know what, as much as I may fight, with 10,000 to the right and 10,000 to the left, there's gonna be a million behind me that aren't gonna make it. And we have to remember that thinking when we're attacking this specific issue, is that it's not going to change in our lifetime. And we're looking for one out of the every 100. And we just got to take them and keep going and say, we love you to the rest, but shit, it is what it is. That's just what it is being Black.
I mean, I disagree. I disagree. I do believe that it can happen in our lifetime, just because of the fact I look at where we have come. 50 years ago, what they used to get done in a business week, I can get done in one day. You know what I mean? We got video conferencing, we got text messaging, we got all kind of shit. So
Okay, can I offer you this, Unc? And this is what I think a lot of Black people don't understand. As much as we have grown, they have grown further. And now they have moved in a space where they are so much in control of us and so further that now we have got to figure out a way to break through that concrete ceiling that they're sitting on top of and figure out what is in their space and what's in their existence. We have not cracked through yet to where we think we have. That gap has still grown, and then now it's starting to widen. So in terms of systematic control, that's why we talk about, when we talk about racism, separate from this conversation, we talk about it systematically. It is so deeply systematic now that we are not to the level of change that we think we are in comparison to the power that they have achieved systematically.
I mean, but I believe we are in the race. I ain't saying that we here, but now we do know about the COINTELPRO.
Mm-hmm.
We do know about that. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they just knew that they were being watched. They didn't know that this was an actual program that was actually administered. We are fully aware that the system is against us. You know, we have to use that momentum, that knowledge to create this movement. And I feel like with us saying that we ain't gonna see it, you know, we've been saying that for forever. You know, Crip and gangbanging, all that shit became existent in our lifetime. You know, in Brother Jeff's life, he didn't, when he was a kid, there wasn't no gang banging and shit like that. So I'm like, if it can be born in our lifetime, I feel like as a community, if the community comes together on one accord, we can dispute that shit. We can dispose of that shit.
But see, this is the thing about it. When you talk about the community coming together on accord, you can't talk about it from a standpoint of destroying or getting rid of this side. What you have to understand, and bro, because when I was a little kid, this is one thing, honestly, that you couldn't have told me. You couldn't have told me that at 38 years old that there would still be Crips and Bloods. I literally thought when I was little, because of all of the trauma, all of, you know what I mean, everything that Crips and Bloods went through, it was like nobody's gonna choose this lifestyle after the next decade. Why would they choose this lifestyle? And my point in bringing that up, bro, is that despite the fact that it happened or it grew within our lifestyle, it is now a viable way of life. Like it has been implemented within our culture. It's not something that you can just, it's almost like trying to cut out cancer. You know what I mean? You really can't do it wholly. You know what I'm saying? Like you can hope that, you know, these organizations can actually start changing to add some positivity in them, but you're never going to get rid of them. You know what I mean? And I believe that wholeheartedly along with Young Huff. You know what I'm saying? And then when you talk about what we can do business wise now, as opposed to back then, of course, and that is kind of a good analogy, but you're talking about business systems as opposed to mentalities, like human mentality. That is a completely different switch over and change. You know what I mean? That's not the same as just changing the software and the computer and, you know, it being different. You know what I mean? And that's why I honestly believe that we can make a change, but I don't think that we're going to eradicate everything that we've seen, you know what I'm saying, or what's happened over the last 30, 40 years in our lifetime. And then lastly, man, just to bring up, you know, the fact that we do know about COINTELPRO and all that stuff now. Yo, them brothers back in the 60s and them brothers back in the 50s and the 40s knew the government was after them, and they knew that there was actual government programs set up to destroy them. So, I mean, you know, I don't want, bro, once again, it's not something just because we have the knowledge that we can change, because these people have so many resources. And this is the other thing. I don't know, once again, if y'all seen Jesus and the Black or Judas and the Black Messiah, bro, best believe that the government has informants in Crips and Bloods. You know what I'm saying? Best believe that every Crip and Blood that you see isn't necessarily just from the community, but some of them have actually been placed there to do more harm and destroy us. And that's what you cannot, you know what I'm saying, just put out your mind. You have to understand that these organizations, it's not just us. You have to understand these organizations are being altered by, you know what I'm saying, government policies and government organizations and people who are infiltrating them to make them negative. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I just want to chime in on.
And James, that just speaks perfectly to also, gangbanging ain't in a vacuum. It's a product of 1,000 different influences on one. So now you look at this generation, for instance, with once again technology. If you gangbang and can spit some bars, nigga, you rich and you famous, and now you on YouTube and now you're on Instagram. So now gang culture, you saw what NWA did in that era and what all the gang Snoop Dogg and all them and Suge Knight did in their era. Look what technology has done now, and look what Little Dirk has done. Look at what NBA YoungBoy has done.
Look what Tekashi has done.
Look at what Tekashi has done. So that's what I'm saying. Now technology has allowed gang culture and the gang mentality to be spread at a rate that's never, ever, ever, ever been seen before. And gang banging and we're talking Crips and Bloods. On the West Coast, no disrespect to LA, but they done calmed down a hell of a lot. If we want to talk about where gang banging's at, let's turn the eye to Chicago and let's look at the conflict between the gangster disciples and the black disciples and their framework, their systematic breakdown is a whole nother separate conversation versus the Crips and Bloods. So when you even look at them, it's like gangbanging is in so many different facets and in so many different forms that it's impossible to break down gang culture because America is a fucking gang. Like gang culture, period, is just a worldly existence. It just sucks that black people have it at such a genocidal rate that it makes ours be highlighted above all else. But America's a big ass gang, and we war against other countries that are another big ass gang. The police is a big ass gang. We're all big ass gangs out here. So at the end of the day, gang culture is a product of human existence alone.
Man, and he said one thing, and I want to chime in on this, bro. With gang culture, we are the only people who separate our gangs from everyone else. Best believe you don't see Asian people trying to fight Asian gangs, and Asian gangsters are some of the most prevalent gangsters across the world. You don't see white people fighting white gangs because they have gangs we are the only people that separate that from what you would necessarily call, regular citizens. And that's one of my biggest things is divide and conquer. Once again, we cannot look at gang members like we want to destroy the Crips and Bloods. We want to eradicate that. That's exactly how we end up in the situation that we are, that we're in, because it's continued separation. But my point of it is that what other culture do you see fighting? And every other culture has gangs. Every other culture has gang members. But what other culture do you see fighting against their gangs harder than us?
None of them have, because none of them have been on a plantation before. And that's
exactly. And to that point too, my purpose. My point is, I'm not trying to. I don't want to feel like I'm trying to eradicate gangbanging because I feel like that is a part of our culture. I'm just saying, make Cripping great again. You know what I mean? Make Cripping safe again.
But it would Cripping was never safe, bro. Like I keep even hearing
when Cripping first started. What do you mean? That's when Cripping was its finest before the crack came in. That's when Cripping was safe.
Bro, I'm hearing that, bro. And I've seen some of the documentaries, and I've seen.
But that's not the Cripping we're talking about. And that's the thing is that Crippin', if we're talking about Took, we're talking about Raymond Washington, we're talking about them dudes. That Crippin' is not here no more. But that shit died with them.
And I hate to say it, them niggas was gangsters. These was they
turned into gangsters because of the product of the environment. So that's what I'm saying. That conceptualization of what Crippin' was, that community revolution in progress, that shit lasted for like 4 years. It had no sustainability. Yeah, from about 68, like I'm a gang historian. 68 to 72, that was it. That's when the shit after that it was done after that.
Then take it back to the issue.
But that's what I'm saying. We have to take it back. Now we have to leave gang and move back to, and this is where it's been cliche, and this is where we fucked up in our community, making it seem boring. Is it's got to move from a gang back to a revolution. We have to move back from thinking of these giant ass groups, our singular groups, into a whole movement revolution. The difference between the word gang and a revolution, or movement and revolution, is a vast difference. And until we get back to the roots of leading a revolution that is inclusionary, then the shit's not gonna work.
And then, man, I'm gonna say as far as being gangsters, once again, like Young Huffs, trying to move back to the revolutionary side of things. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily is just not realistic. You know, I think that there are ways that we can try to change or turn that, you know, that ship a little bit. But, you know, one of the biggest things that I think we have to do as Black people is really understand that. I think that every other culture also understands that you can do gangster shit, but you can also, you know, build your mind and do, you know what I'm saying,
Mhm.
shit for your community that really is positive and builds. There's something about our culture where cats join gangs or become gangsters, and it's like that is all my identity can be.
Yeah.
Now I have to turn off any other education. And this is what our gangs don't understand, is that the best gangsters are the educated ones. And that's why, once again, that our gangbangers stick out like a sore thumb, because some of these white gangsters, some of these, Jewish, Italian, even Latino gangsters, you know, they are also in the business world. You know what I mean? They also, the way that they actually, you know, uphold themselves in their community is not in a way that makes them look negative. And it seems like I said, I don't, why can't, my question is, why can't there be Crips who are also engineers? Why can't there be Crips who are also lawyers who are focused on making sure that they can actually, you know what I'm saying, defend their homies? You know what I'm saying? Once again,
That's
I'm talking
making
about something
tripping
that's
great
going to be
again.
hard to get to,
Hey,
but
let me. I just want to say one sentence. You know what I'm saying? Gangster, the original meaning of being gangster is defying the system, being defiant against the system. So let's start teaching little niggas what it actually means to be a gangster.
Period. That's the move right there. I think that's where we're gonna end it off at too, shoot. Period. You know what I mean? Hey, you know, I sure do always appreciate y'all brothers tapping in on this dialogue, man. You know, it's always a beautiful thing. Yes, indeed. I'm gonna tap in with y'all.
all
Much
right, bro.
love.
Already. Peace. Now, if you
Appreciate